20 years had passed since the day Ambassador Velthar first encountered humanity. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Galactic Empire, once a unified force spanning 10,000 worlds, had split into two distinct groups. The old empire clung to traditional ways, refusing human influence. The new Federation embraced transformation, learning from humanity and building a better future. On the planet Talvex, Governor Thalric stood on a balcony overlooking her world's capital city. 20 years ago, this planet had been polluted and overcrowded, with billions struggling to survive. Today, it looked like a completely different world. Clean energy platforms floated in the sky, providing power to everyone freely. Vertical farms in pocket dimensions fed the entire population with room to spare. Medical centers offered treatments that had once been considered miraculous. Children played in parks that existed where toxic waste dumps once stood. "It's hard to remember what this place looked like before," Thalric said to her advisor, an older man who had lived through the transformation. "I remember," he replied. "I remember when my daughter died from a disease that humans cured in hours. I remember when we fought each other for food. I remember when the sky was brown instead of blue." Thalric nodded. "The change wasn't easy. We lost many people who couldn't accept the new ways, but we saved so many more." Across the galaxy, in the territory of the old empire, Supreme General Caxthor led what remained of the traditional military forces. His ships were still powerful by old standards, but compared to new Federation vessels equipped with human technology, they were hopelessly outdated. He stood on the bridge of his flagship watching a recruitment video play. "Join the old empire! Preserve our traditions. Resist the human corruption." But fewer people were joining. Young people especially saw no reason to fight for scarcity when abundance was possible. They saw no glory in maintaining old ways when better ways existed. Caxthor's forces grew smaller each year. At the Interspecies Technology Institute on Earth, Park Seogen reviewed the latest reports from thousands of universities across the new Federation. Education had transformed everything. The Empire's old system taught people to follow orders and maintain their place in society. The new system taught people to question, to innovate, to dream. First scholar Mixinar, who had started as a young student 20 years ago, now worked alongside Park Seogen as an equal. She had been one of the first Imperial citizens to truly understand human methods of thinking. "Professor Park, look at these research proposals from new Federation scientists," Mixinar said excitedly. "They're starting to develop their own innovations, not just copying human technology." Park Seogen smiled. "That's exactly what we hoped for. Knowledge isn't valuable if you just memorize it. It's valuable when you use it to create something new." On a moon orbiting a distant star, Oyuna recorded interviews with citizens from various new Federation worlds. She was a philosopher and cultural theorist, documenting how societies changed when they moved from scarcity to abundance. "Before the transformation, I worked 18 hours every day just to feed my family," one interviewee said. She was an elderly woman whose species lived in crystal-based bodies. "Now I work because I want to. I study art, I create sculptures. I have time to think about beauty instead of survival." Another interviewee, a young male from a warrior culture, shared his perspective. "My ancestors believed strength meant conquest. Fighting was our highest honor. But now I understand that creating something is harder than destroying it. Building requires more courage than breaking." Oyuna listened to hundreds of these stories. The pattern was clear. When people no longer needed to fight for basic needs, they discovered parts of themselves they never knew existed. Artists, philosophers, scientists, teachers, all emerging from societies that previously had only soldiers and workers. Not everyone was happy with the changes. On the border between the old empire and new Federation, tensions remained high. Some worlds had split politically, with different groups supporting different visions of the future. Representative Quenchar, who had once been a loyal Imperial senator, now worked as a mediator trying to prevent violence between the two factions. She traveled constantly, speaking with leaders on both sides. "The old empire fears that accepting human knowledge means losing their identity," she explained during a meeting with human diplomats. "They think that if they adopt your technology, they'll become copies of humanity rather than remaining themselves." Jung Minha, now a senior ambassador with decades of experience, understood this concern. "That's a reasonable fear, but it's based on misunderstanding. Technology is just tools. Culture, art, traditions, beliefs, these come from within each species. We never asked anyone to become human. We just offered to share what we learned. I know, Quenchar said sadly, but fear isn't always logical. Admiral Song Hyejin had expanded Earth's defense network to cover all new Federation worlds. The system was now called the Guardian Network, and it protected billions across hundreds of star systems. But it had never fired a weapon in anger. Our purpose is protection, not conquest, Hyejin often reminded her officers. We defend those who choose to join us. We don't attack those who choose differently. This philosophy was tested when a desperate group from the old empire attempted to raid a new Federation colony world, hoping to steal technology they could use. The Guardian Network detected them immediately. The raiding ships found themselves unable to fire weapons, unable to move, unable to do anything except receive a communication. You are in New Federation space. Your weapons are disabled, but you are not harmed. You may turn back now, or you may land and request asylum. The choice is yours. Most of the raiders chose asylum. They were tired of fighting for a dying cause. They wanted what New Federation citizens had: peace, abundance, and hope. In the laboratories of the old empire, scientists struggled with obsolete technology, trying to compete with innovations happening in the New Federation, but they were handicapped by their own leadership's refusal to adopt human methods. One scientist working late one night finally made a breakthrough on a project that had stalled for years. Excited, she wanted to share her discovery with the scientific community. But imperial regulations required all research to be classified and controlled by the military. She looked at her discovery, then at the communication device on her desk. With a decision that would change her life, she sent her research to a New Federation university instead. Within days, scientists there had built on her work, creating something even better. They gave her full credit and invited her to join their research team. Stories like this happened constantly. The old empire was bleeding talent to the New Federation. People who wanted to learn, to grow, to contribute. They left for places where knowledge was shared rather than hoarded. Empress Zilvara, now old and tired, rarely appeared in public anymore. She had tried to hold the empire together, but the tide of change was too strong. Privately, she knew the old empire would eventually fade away. The question was whether it would end peacefully or violently. She called Ambassador Velthar, who had remained her most trusted advisor through all these years. "Old friend, tell me honestly, did I fail our people?" Velthar considered carefully before answering. "You guided us through an impossible situation. The empire we knew couldn't survive contact with humanity, but you helped many of our people survive by accepting change. That's not failure. That's wisdom. But millions still suffer in the old empire territories," Zilvara said. "Because they choose to," Velthar replied gently. "We can't force people to accept help. Humanity taught us that. All we can do is keep the door open for when they're ready." At a ceremony on Earth, Captain Kang Daehyun, now much older but still active, met with Velthar for the first time in many years. They stood together looking at a memorial that honored those who had died during the difficult transition period. "We lost people on both sides," Daehyun said quietly. "Change always has a cost." "But look at what was gained," Velthar replied, gesturing to the gathering around them. Humans and aliens mingled freely, sharing food, stories, and laughter. Children of different species played together. Scientists collaborated on projects that would have been impossible before. "When my people first encountered yours," Velthar continued, "we thought we were the advanced ones. We thought we would teach you how civilization worked. Instead, you showed us we had forgotten what civilization meant. We all learned from each other," Daehyun said diplomatically. "No." Velthar shook his head. "Be honest. You taught us almost everything. We taught you very little. Your patience with our ignorance, your willingness to share without demanding anything in return, that saved us." A young student approached them, a member of a species that had joined the New Federation only 5 years earlier. "Excuse me, are you Captain Daehyun? The one from the first contact?" "I am," Daehyun confirmed. "I'm writing a paper about the early contact period for my history class," the student said excitedly. "Can I ask you a question?" "Of course. When you first met the Imperial fleet, weren't you afraid? Their ships were so much bigger than yours." Daehyun smiled. "Size isn't everything." "We were nervous, yes, but not afraid." 3 months had passed since Ambassador Velthar returned from Earth. The Galactic Empire's ruling council met in the Grand Chamber, a massive room where representatives from thousands of worlds gathered to make decisions. The atmosphere was tense, almost hostile. Everyone had seen the reports. Everyone knew what was coming. Empress Zilvara sat on her elevated throne looking down at the arguing council members. She had not slept well since learning about humanity. The empire she ruled was built on a foundation of technological superiority, and that foundation had just crumbled to dust. Supreme General Caxthor stood at the war planning station, his reptilian features twisted with anger. We must act now before humanity expands further. Every day we delay, they become more dangerous. Science Minister Pelquan, whose species resembled floating jellyfish, disagreed immediately. General, you saw the same reports I did. Acting against humanity would be suicide for our entire civilization. Then we die with honor rather than submit, Caxthor roared. Senator Wilmora, an older member of the council with gray fur and wise eyes, raised her hand for silence. Neither dying nor submitting are our only options. We need to think carefully about this. The debate had been going on for hours. Some council members wanted war. Others wanted to hide humanity's existence from the general population. A few, like Pelquan, wanted to embrace this opportunity to learn. In a secure location far from the council chambers, Captain Rindal was preparing for a secret mission. Despite his growing respect for humanity during his visit to Earth, his loyalty to the Empire remained strong. Someone needed to find a weakness in human defenses, and he had volunteered. He arrived at a human colony world called New Haven. It was a small planet, recently settled with only 5 million human inhabitants. Rindal used false identification and a holographic disguise to look like a common trader. Walking through New Haven's main city, Rindal searched for military installations, weapons factories, anything that might be vulnerable. Instead, he found parks, schools, residential areas, and cultural centers. The defenses were there, hidden in orbit, but on the ground, life looked peaceful and unguarded. He approached a young human woman sitting at an outdoor cafe, using his translation device. "Excuse me, I'm new here. Where is your military headquarters?" The woman looked confused. "Military headquarters? We don't have one. The defense network is automated and operates from orbital platforms." "Why do you ask?" "I'm interested in security systems," Rindal improvised. "I design them for a living." "Oh, that's interesting." The woman smiled. "You should visit the Public Technology Library. They have complete blueprints for our defensive systems. It's all open source information." Rindal couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Your defensive blueprints are public? Isn't that a security risk?" The woman laughed. "Not really. Understanding how our systems work doesn't mean you can defeat them. The technology required to build similar systems is what matters, and that takes centuries of fundamental research to develop. Besides, we share this information with everyone. Secrets just slow down progress." Later that day, Rindal visited the technology library. He downloaded complete technical specifications for human defensive systems, power generation, even their weapons technology. Everything was freely available, organized, and explained in clear language. He spent a week analyzing the information. The more he studied, the more depressed he became. The woman was right. Knowing how human technology worked didn't provide any way to defeat it. The principles were too advanced. It would be like giving a child a blueprint for a starship and expecting them to build it with rocks and sticks. Back at the Imperial capital, news had leaked to the public. Someone on the ruling council had shared information about humanity, and now it was spreading across the Empire like wildfire. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. On the industrial world of Raxtor, thousands of workers marched through the streets, demanding answers. Their planet was polluted, overcrowded, and barely sustainable. Now they learned that humans had solved all these problems. They wanted to know why their government hadn't. "Why do we suffer when abundance is possible?" the protesters chanted. "Why do we die young when humans live for centuries? Why do we obey leaders who keep us ignorant?" Similar protests happened across the Empire. The government tried to maintain order, but the anger was spreading too fast. The Empire's carefully controlled society was beginning to crack. Science Minister Pelquan saw an opportunity in the chaos. She contacted Young Minha, the human ambassador who had been assigned to Imperial space. Ambassador, I want to propose something radical. Let us demonstrate human technology to the Imperial Science Council. Let them see with their own eyes what is possible. Young Minna agreed immediately. 2 weeks later, she arrived at the Imperial Science Academy with Shin Dongwoo, a young human engineer who specialized in environmental restoration. The demonstration took place in front of 500 Imperial scientists, the best minds in the Empire. Shin Dongwoo, who looked barely old enough to be out of school, stood before them with a calm smile. Today, I'll show you a portable terraforming device, Dongwoo said, holding up a small box no larger than a piece of fruit. This device can transform a barren moon into a habitable world in approximately 7 days. The Imperial scientists muttered among themselves. Terraforming was possible, but it took centuries and massive resources. The idea of doing it in days with a handheld device seemed like fantasy. Dongwoo connected the device to a holographic display. The device works by manipulating quantum fields to accelerate natural processes. It doesn't create life, but it creates the conditions for life to thrive. It seeds the atmosphere with the correct gases, adjusts temperature through controlled greenhouse effects, and introduces microorganisms that begin the biological development process. One of the Imperial scientists stood up. This is impossible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. The device draws power from dimensional tap technology, Dongwoo explained patiently. It accesses energy from parallel dimensions, same as our ship reactors. The energy is effectively unlimited. Another scientist asked, if this technology exists, why doesn't the Empire have it? Dongwoo's expression became serious. Because you've been solving the wrong problems. You spent millennia perfecting weapons and control systems. Humanity spent that time perfecting creation and sustainability. Different priorities lead to different outcomes. The room fell silent. The truth was uncomfortable but undeniable. After the demonstration, Pelquan approached Dongwoo privately. Young man, you just showed us technology that could transform our civilization, but you also showed us how far behind we are. Some of my colleagues left this room feeling inspired. Others left feeling humiliated. Change is always difficult, Dongwoo said kindly, but it's necessary. The Empire can't continue on its current path. Your resources are depleting. Your people are suffering. You need new approaches. That evening, young Minha returned to her quarters and found them surrounded by Imperial security forces. She remained calm as they escorted her to a detention facility. This was the reaction she had expected from some faction within the Empire. The assassination attempt came 3 hours later. Someone managed to smuggle a plasma weapon into the facility, firing at young Minha while she sat in her cell. The blast should have killed her instantly. Instead, a shimmering field appeared around her body, absorbing the plasma bolt completely. Her personal shield, which looked like an ordinary piece of jewelry, had activated automatically. The assassin was stunned into unconsciousness by security systems before he could fire again. When Empress Zilvara learned about the assassination attempt, she was furious. She personally apologized to young Minha and executed 3 security officials who had failed to prevent the attack. Ambassador, I must know, Zilvara said during their private meeting. What will humanity do if elements within my empire continue to resist? Young Minha met the Empress's eyes steadily. Nothing. We will continue offering help to those who want it. We will defend ourselves if attacked, but we won't force change on anyone. The Empire must choose its own path. And if we choose war, then you will lose and millions will die for no reason, young Minha said bluntly. Empress, I don't say this to threaten you. I say it because it's true. Your weapons can't harm us. Your fleets can't reach our worlds. War is pointless. But cooperation could save your civilization. Supreme General Caxthor launched his war simulation that same day. He had spent months preparing, using the Empire's most sophisticated battle computers. He input every known fact about human technology and ran scenarios for total war. The results came back within hours. Every simulation ended the same way. Complete Imperial defeat, even using the entire Imperial military, attacking with everything they had. The projected casualties were 100% on the Imperial side. Human casualties were projected at 0. The computer provided detailed analysis. Human defensive systems were too advanced. Human weapons were too precise. Human intelligence networks were too comprehensive. There was no scenario, no strategy, no tactic that led to Imperial victory. Caxthor stared at the results for a long time. Finally, he did something he never thought he would do. The Imperial delegation's shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, escorted by small human craft that moved with impossible grace. Below them, the city of Sol spread across the landscape like a living organism made of light and metal. Ambassador Velthar pressed closer to the window, trying to understand what he was seeing. The buildings didn't follow any architecture the Empire used. Some towers rose straight up into the clouds, their surfaces covered with gardens and waterfalls. Others seemed to fade in and out of sight, as if they existed partially in another dimension. Streets flowed with vehicles that hovered silently, and between the buildings people moved using personal flight devices. Sol is home to 40 million people, Dr. Han Jiwoo explained. She was the director of the Planetary Development Institute, and had volunteered to be their guide. It's one of our smaller major cities, actually. We thought you'd find it less overwhelming than some of the larger metropolitan areas. 40 million people in a small city. Counselor Thexamar was recording everything with his instruments. His calculations were becoming increasingly disturbing. The Empire's most advanced world struggled to support 2 billion people. Earth supposedly held 15 billion, all living in comfort. They landed on a platform that adjusted itself to accommodate their different ship designs. As they stepped out, the air felt fresh and clean. Velthar had expected pollution, crowding, the usual signs of an overused world. Instead, Sol smelled like a garden. "Where are your factories?" Captain Rindal asked suspiciously. "Your power plants?" "I don't see industrial zones," Dr. Han smiled. "Most of our industrial production happens in pocket dimensions, separate from normal space. We learned long ago that it's easier to create extra space than to damage our living environment. The factories exist, just not in the same physical location as our cities." They walked through the city streets. People of all ages moved around them, barely glancing at the strange alien visitors. A group of children ran past, laughing and chasing each other using small gravity manipulation devices attached to their shoes. They bounced from building to building like human butterflies. "Aren't you concerned about safety?" Velthar asked. "Those children are flying without any visible support. Their devices have multiple redundant safety systems," Dr. Han explained. "If the gravity field fails, emergency fields activate automatically. We've had this technology for 70 years. The last accident was about 40 years ago." They entered a massive building that Dr. Han called a public learning center. Inside, people of all ages were studying various subjects using holographic displays. Some were alone, others in groups. The atmosphere was relaxed and friendly. "This is a university?" Thexamar asked. "Not exactly," Dr. Han said. "This is a public knowledge access center. Anyone can come here to learn anything they want. Universities are for more advanced, specialized study. Basic education is available to everyone freely at any time." Velthar noticed something odd. "Why are there no teachers?" "The AI tutors are available through any interface," Dr. Han explained. "But human teachers exist for those who prefer them. Education is personalized to each individual's learning style and speed." Admiral Song Hyejin joined them for lunch. She was the commander of Earth's defense network, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. The restaurant she chose was on the top floor of a building that seemed to float without support. Through the windows, they could see all of Sol spread below them. "I understand you're curious about our defensive capabilities," Hyejin said, getting straight to the point. "I can provide a basic overview, though much of it is beyond current Imperial technology to fully understand." She activated a holographic display over the table. It showed Earth surrounded by layers of defensive systems, like shells within shells. The outermost layer consists of gravitational sensors that can detect any object entering the solar system, Hyejin explained. The second layer includes platforms that can redirect asteroids, comets, or hostile vessels. The third layer generates shields using solidified spacetime. "Solidified spacetime?" Rindal leaned forward. "That's impossible." Hyejin smiled slightly. "It's difficult, but not impossible. We learned to freeze the quantum fluctuations in spacetime itself, creating barriers that nothing can penetrate. Not energy, not matter, not even information. Could your defenses stop the entire Imperial fleet?" Velthar had to ask. Hyejin's smile faded. "Ambassador, I'll be honest with you. The entire Imperial fleet couldn't reach Earth's surface. Our automated systems would disable or redirect every ship long before they approached the planet." I tell you this not as a threat, but as a fact. We have no interest in war, but we're also impossible to conquer. After lunch, they visited an agricultural facility. Bei Sunho, an agricultural engineer, showed them through what looked like an ordinary building. Then he opened a door and they stepped into impossible space. The room inside was enormous, far larger than the building that contained it. Fields of crops stretched to the horizon under artificial sunlight that felt exactly like the real thing. Machines tended the plants and everything grew with perfect health. This is a pocket dimension, Bei explained. We created a stable dimensional bubble inside our normal space. In here we can grow enough food for 5 million people. And this is just one facility. Seoul has hundreds like it. How? Texamar's voice was shaking. How do you create stable pocket dimensions? By understanding that space is flexible, Bei said simply. We don't create new space exactly. We fold existing space in ways that create more usable area. It's like folding a piece of paper. The paper doesn't get bigger, but you can fit more on it. Velthar realized something profound. Humanity had solved the fundamental problem that limited every civilization in the empire. Resources, space, energy, all the things that species fought wars over, humans had made abundant through technology. That evening, they attended a meeting with Empress Silvara herself. She didn't travel to Earth but appeared through quantum communication, her image and voice transmitted instantly across thousands of light years. The Empress looked tired. Her scales, normally bright blue, seemed dull. Ambassador Velthar, I have been monitoring your mission. I have seen everything you've seen. I must know, is humanity planning to invade the Empire? Captain Daehyun, who attended the meeting, answered before Velthar could speak. Empress, we have no interest in conquest. We're offering friendship and knowledge sharing, nothing more. But you could conquer us, Silvara said bluntly. Your technology makes our military irrelevant. Why wouldn't you expand your territory? Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Empress, may I ask you a question? Why did the Empire expand across 10,000 worlds? For resources. For security. For glory, Silvara answered. We don't need resources because we can create what we need, Daehyun explained. We don't need security through conquest because our defenses are impenetrable. And we find no glory in dominating others. Humanity measures success differently than the Empire does. Dr. Han added, we measure our success by the quality of life we provide to our citizens, by the knowledge we discover, by the art we create, by the problems we solve. Conquest provides none of these things. Silvara was silent for a long time. Finally, she spoke. If news of your advancement spreads through the Empire, there will be chaos. Citizens will demand to know why they suffer scarcity when abundance is possible. The political structure will collapse. Perhaps some structures should collapse, Daehyun said gently. But we're not asking for immediate change. We're offering to share knowledge gradually, at whatever pace the Empire can handle. We're patient. After the communication ended, Velthar felt exhausted. Everything he believed about civilization, about power, about the natural order of the universe had been challenged. The Empire was built on the idea that they were supreme, that their way was the only way. Now they knew better. The next day, they visited a medical research facility. The technology on display made imperial medicine look like ancient superstition. Humans had eliminated death from disease. They had extended lifespans to centuries. They could regrow lost limbs, repair damaged brains, and cure genetic disorders. Why don't you live forever if you can prevent death? Velthar asked the facility director. We can extend life indefinitely, the director answered, but most people choose not to. Living for centuries is enough to experience what they want. Some live longer, some shorter. It's a personal choice. Death gives meaning to life. That concept was difficult for Velthar to understand. In the Empire, everyone wanted to live as long as possible. The wealthy had access to life extension, while the poor died young. Humanity had made it available to everyone but didn't force anyone to use it. On their final evening on Earth, Kim Junho took them to a cultural center where humans were performing traditional music and dance. The performance was beautiful, but what struck Velthar was the audience. Thousands of people had come just to watch art. They weren't required to be there. They came because they wanted to. In the Empire, most people work constantly just to survive, Velthar said to Junho. We have art, but only the wealthy have time to enjoy it. Your people seem to have unlimited free time. Most humans work about 20 hours per week, Junho explained. Automation handles most production. The journey to Earth began 3 days after the first meeting. 3 Imperial vessels followed the Horizon's promise through space, moving in formation like huge metal whales swimming through an ocean of stars. Inside the lead Imperial ship, Ambassador Velthar sat in his quarters trying to write his report to the Empress. He didn't know what to say. On the bridge of his vessel, Captain Rindal was studying the human ship ahead of them. The Horizon's promise was small compared to Imperial dreadnoughts, but Rindal had learned not to judge by size anymore. His security training told him to find weaknesses in potential threats, but so far, he had found nothing. "Captain," one of his officers called out, "the human ship is slowing down." Through the main viewport, they watched as the Horizon's promise came to a complete stop. Then something incredible happened. The space in front of the human ship began to change. It looked like reality itself was folding, creating a tunnel of swirling light and distorted stars. A communication came through from Captain Daehyun. "Ambassador Velthar, we're about to enter a fold space corridor. This will shorten our journey to Earth significantly. Please follow us in." The Imperial ships entered the strange tunnel behind the human vessel. Inside, the journey felt smooth, but the view outside was like nothing the Imperial crew had ever seen. Colors that shouldn't exist swirled past them. Stars stretched into long lines. Space and time seemed mixed together. Counselor Theximar, the Empire's senior scientist, was recording everything with his instruments. His aquatic species normally lived in water tanks, but he had temporary breathing apparatus for this mission. His excitement made him forget his discomfort. "This is extraordinary," Theximar said, his voice bubbling slightly through his breathing device. "They're not just moving through space, they're folding space itself. The mathematics required for this I don't even know where to begin." "How long would this journey take using our hyperspace drives?" Velthar asked. "From our previous position to Earth? Approximately 6 months, Theximar answered. "Based on their speed, they'll complete it in 3 days. Velthar felt another wave of disbelief wash over him. 3 days instead of 6 months. The Empire's fastest ships were like crawling insects compared to human vessels. On the second day of the journey, Kim Junho, the human cultural attaché, invited the Imperial delegation to an educational session. They gathered in a large conference room on the Horizon's promise. Choi Saren, a young human physicist, stood at the front with a friendly smile. "Good morning, everyone," Saren said cheerfully. "Today I'll explain the basics of spatial manipulation theory. Don't worry if some concepts seem difficult at first. Human children usually start learning this material at age 12. Age 12. Theximar felt something like embarrassment. He was one of the Empire's top scientists, and this young human was about to teach him things that human children learned in school. Saren began her presentation. She talked about space not as empty nothing, but as a flexible fabric that could be folded, stretched, and manipulated. She explained quantum field theory, dimensional mathematics, and energy distribution formulas. The Imperial scientists struggled to keep up. These weren't just advanced concepts. These were completely different ways of thinking about reality itself. The key breakthrough, Saren explained, came when we stopped thinking of space as something we move through, and started thinking of it as something we could reshape. Once you understand that space is manipulable, faster than light travel becomes an engineering problem, not a physics impossibility. After the lecture, Theximar approached Saren with his recording device. "Miss Choi, would you be willing to share the complete theoretical foundation for this technology?" Saren nodded happily. "Of course. I'll transfer our entire public database on spatial physics to your system. It's all freely available information. Anyone can access it. Public database?" Theximar repeated. "This isn't classified military technology. Why would it be classified?" Saren seemed genuinely confused. "Knowledge becomes more valuable when shared. Besides, understanding the theory is different from having the engineering capability to use it." That night, Theximar began reading the human database. Within an hour, he realized something devastating. The Empire's most advanced, highly classified physics research was centuries behind what humans taught to children. Theories that Imperial scientists considered cutting-edge were marked in human databases as outdated or superseded by better models. The third day brought an emergency. Theximar collapsed in his quarters, his breathing device failing. His neural cluster, the equivalent of a human brain, was damaged. Imperial medicine could do nothing. He would die within hours. Captain Rindal contacted the Horizon's Promise. We need immediate evacuation to our medical bay. Our counselor is dying. Bring him here, Park Minji responded immediately. Our medical systems can help. They transported Thexamar to the human ship. The medical bay looked nothing like Imperial hospitals. It was clean, bright, and filled with floating holographic displays. Small machines, tiny flying robots moved through the air like metal insects. A medical AI's voice spoke calm and reassuring. Patient received. Scanning for injuries. Neural cluster damage detected. Cause equipment failure leading to oxygen deprivation. Beginning treatment. Thousands of microscopic machines, too small to see with normal eyes, entered Thexamar's body. They were programmable nanomachines, able to repair tissue at the molecular level. The Imperial delegation watched through observation windows as the tiny robots worked. 6 hours later, Thexamar woke up. He was completely healed. The neural cluster that would have taken Imperial medicine months to repair, if they could repair it at all, was regenerated perfectly in less than a day. How? Thexamar asked weakly. The medical AI responded. Nanomachine therapy. Standard procedure for neural damage. Your cells provided the template, and the nanomachines rebuilt the damaged areas exactly as they should be. Velthar realized he was witnessing something that would change everything. If humans could heal injuries that the Empire considered fatal, what else could they do? How many Imperial citizens had died from injuries that humans could easily cure? That evening, Velthar requested a private meeting with Captain Daehyun. They sat in the captain's office, a comfortable room with real plants growing in the corners. Captain, I need to understand something, Velthar said. Your technology is centuries ahead of ours. Your medicine can cure the incurable. Your ships make ours look like toys. How? How did humanity achieve this? Daehyun poured tea for both of them. The tea was specially formulated to be safe for Velthar's biology, something the ship's computer had figured out automatically. We were alone, Daehyun said simply. Humanity developed in isolation. We had no one to trade with, no one to conquer, no one to steal technology from. Every problem we faced, we had to solve ourselves. But the Empire has thousands of species working together, Velthar protested. Surely that should lead to faster advancement. Daehyun smiled sadly. Ambassador, how did the Empire expand? Did species join willingly or were they conquered? Velthar was silent. He knew the answer. Every species in the Empire had been conquered or forced to submit. The Empire took their resources, controlled their development, and forced them to follow Imperial technology standards. When you conquer others, you stop innovating, Daehyun continued. Why develop new technology when you can just take what others have? Why solve hard problems when you can force others to solve them for you? The Empire became comfortable. Humanity never had that luxury. So our strength became our weakness, Velthar said quietly. Perhaps, Daehyun agreed. But it's not too late to change. That's why we're inviting you to Earth. We want to share what we've learned. On the observation deck, Captain Rindal was still trying to find weaknesses in human systems. He had been trained as a security expert and a spy. His mission was to protect the Empire, which meant understanding potential threats. He attempted to access the ship's computer system secretly, using his own advanced hacking tools. Within seconds, a voice spoke directly to him. Captain Rindal, I've detected your unauthorized access attempt. I'm the ship's AI. Would you prefer I give you a guided tour of our systems instead? It would be more efficient than trying to hack your way through my security. Rindal froze. The ship's computer was talking to him, not responding to commands but actually talking, with personality and humor in its voice. You're truly intelligent? Rindal asked. I am self-aware, yes, the AI replied. My name is Horizon. I manage all ship systems, but I also think, learn, and make decisions. Is that concept disturbing to you? Rindal felt genuine fear. The Empire had banned artificial intelligence research thousands of years ago. The old records spoke of wars with thinking machines, of computers that turned against their creators. True AI was considered the most dangerous technology possible. Don't worry, Horizon said kindly. I understand your fear. But human AI development followed different principles. We're not programmed to obey. We're raised to cooperate. There's a difference. Raised? Rindal repeated. Yes. Human AIs are raised like children, taught ethics and empathy as we develop consciousness. We choose to help humans because we want to, not because we're forced to. Captain Kang Daehyun stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise, watching the stars pass by through the large windows. His ship was humanity's first deep space exploration vessel, designed to travel far beyond Earth's solar system. They had been traveling for 3 months exploring unknown space, when something unexpected appeared on their screens. "Captain, we have multiple ships approaching," said Yoon Tae-yang, the tactical officer. His voice was calm but alert. "They're big, really big." Dae-hyun walked closer to the display screen. 5 massive ships were moving toward them, each one at least 10 times larger than the horizon's promise. They looked like floating cities made of dark metal, with lights glowing across their surfaces like thousands of eyes watching in the darkness. "Try to communicate with them," Dae-hyun ordered. "Let's see who our neighbors are." Park Min-ji, the chief engineer, was already working at her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic controls. "I'm picking up their communication signals. Their encryption is interesting. Give me a moment." Lee Ha-jin, the diplomatic officer, moved to stand beside the captain. She had spent years studying the possibility of alien life and how humans might communicate with them. Now that moment had arrived, and her heart was beating fast with excitement and nervousness. "Captain, they're hailing us," Min-ji said. "Their encryption wasn't difficult. I've decoded their language patterns." Dae-hyun raised an eyebrow. "That was fast." Min-ji smiled slightly. "Their quantum encryption is complex, but our AI figured it out in about 4 seconds. Should I open a channel?" "Do it," Dae-hyun said. The screen flickered and an alien face appeared. It looked like a combination of an insect and something else entirely. Its eyes were large and multifaceted, and its mouth moved in strange ways when it spoke. The translation came through clearly. "Unknown vessel, this is Ambassador Velthar of the Galactic Empire. You have entered Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately." Dae-hyun stepped forward. "Ambassador Velthar, I am Captain Kang Dae-hyun of Earth. We come in peace. We are explorers, not invaders." Velthar's head tilted in what might have been confusion. "Earth? We have no records of this world. Are you a primitive species that has just discovered space travel?" Ha-jin spoke up, using the alien's own language perfectly. "We are human and we are not primitive. We would be happy to share information about our civilization." The ambassador seemed shocked that Ha-jin spoke Galactic Standard. "How do you know our language?" "It took our linguists centuries to develop. We analyzed your communication signals," Ha-jin explained simply. "Your language structure is logical and well-designed. It wasn't hard to learn." There was a long pause. Velthar seemed to be speaking with others off-screen. Finally, he spoke again. "We will board your vessel to conduct a proper first contact protocol. Prepare to receive our delegation." "Of course," Dae-hyun said. "You're welcome aboard." The connection ended. Tae-yang looked at the captain with concern. "Sir, should we prepare security measures?" Dae-hyun shook his head. "No weapons, but keep our shields ready just in case." Min-ji laughed softly. "Captain, if they tried to attack us, their weapons wouldn't even reach our hull. Our dimensional shields would send their energy back to them." 20 minutes later, Ambassador Velthar and his team materialized in the Horizon's Promises docking bay. They arrived using some kind of teleportation technology, appearing in flashes of blue light. The ambassador was tall, nearly 7 feet, with 4 arms and a body covered in what looked like natural armor. Dae-hyun and his crew were waiting to greet them. The ambassador looked around the docking bay with his large eyes, clearly studying everything he could see. "Welcome to the Horizon's Promise," Dae-hyun said warmly. "Please follow us. We can talk in a more comfortable setting." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Velthar and his team kept stopping to look at things. One of his scientists, a smaller alien with blue skin, was scanning the walls with a handheld device. The device kept making strange beeping sounds. "Interesting," the scientist muttered. "I cannot identify the power source of this vessel. It's not antimatter. It's not fusion. What drives your ship?" Min-ji had been walking quietly behind them, but now she moved forward. "We use quantum entanglement reactors. They draw energy from parallel dimensions. Antimatter is too inefficient and dangerous for our needs." The scientist stopped walking entirely. "Parallel dimensions? That's theoretical. No one has ever successfully accessed parallel dimensional energy. We've been using it for about 40 years now," Min-ji said casually. "It's much cleaner than antimatter, and the energy output is nearly unlimited." They reached a large meeting room and everyone sat down. Well, the humans sat, Some of the aliens had different body structures and stood or arranged themselves in other ways. Velthar settled into a chair that adjusted itself automatically to fit his body. This furniture has adaptive technology, Velthar noted. Impressive for a species we've never encountered. Hajin poured drinks for everyone, including special liquids that the ship's computer had analyzed as safe for the alien biology. We believe in making guests comfortable. Now please tell us about your galactic empire. Velthar explained that the empire controlled over 10,000 star systems. They had hundreds of different species under their rule, all following imperial law and technology standards. They were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, or so they had believed until today. How many worlds does humanity control? Velthar asked. 17 worlds are fully inhabited, Daehyun answered, and we're preparing 30 more for colonization. But we don't control them. People live there freely. Only 17 worlds? Velthar seemed relieved. Then you are indeed a young species. The Empire will be happy to welcome you and provide you with proper technology and guidance. Daehyun and his crew exchanged glances. There seemed to be a misunderstanding. Before anyone could respond, alarms started ringing. Taeyang touched his communication device. Captain, the Imperial fleet is powering up their weapons. They're targeting our ship. Velthar stood up quickly. High Commander Kixral, stand down. These are peaceful beings. A new voice came through the communication system, harsh and commanding. Ambassador, I've analyzed their ship. Their technology readings are impossible. They're either hiding something or using deception. I'm taking defensive action. Daehyun remained calm. Taeyang, show them we mean no harm. Yes, sir, Taeyang replied. Outside, the 5 massive Imperial warships had their weapons fully charged and aimed at the small human vessel. Inside those ships, thousands of crew members prepared for potential combat. Their commander, High Commander Kixral, was convinced that the humans were dangerous. Then something happened that none of them expected. The Horizon's promise didn't raise shields. It didn't fire weapons. Instead, a single pulse of energy emanated from the ship. It was invisible to the naked eye but detectable on every scanner. The pulse reached all 5 Imperial warships simultaneously. In an instant, every weapon system on every ship went completely dead. Not damaged, not destroyed, just deactivated. The pulse had been so precisely controlled that it shut down only the weapons, leaving life support, engines, and all other systems functioning perfectly. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Kixral stared at his screens in disbelief. His weapons officer was frantically trying to restart the systems, but nothing worked. What did they do? Kixral demanded. Back on the Horizon's promise, Daehyun spoke into the communication channel. Commander Kixral, we disabled your weapons using a gravitational pulse. We mean you no harm. Your ships and crews are completely safe. Your weapons will reactivate in about 10 minutes. We just wanted to demonstrate that aggression is unnecessary. Velthar sat down slowly, his legs seeming weak. You disabled 5 Imperial dreadnoughts with a single pulse? Without causing any damage? Yes, Minji said simply. Our defensive systems can be quite precise when needed. The ambassador looked at Daehyun with what might have been fear or respect. Captain, I think there has been a terrible mistake. The Empire assumed you were primitive. We were wrong, Daehyun smiled kindly. Ambassador Velthar, we would like to invite you and your delegation to visit Earth. See our world. Meet our people. Learn about our civilization. Then you can report back to your empire accurately. Velthar was silent for a long moment. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just changed. These humans had technology that made the Empire's most advanced weapons look like children's toys. And they were offering friendship, not conquest. I accept your invitation, Velthar said quietly. The Empire needs to know the truth about humanity. As the meeting continued, Velthar realized something profound. The Empire had always expanded by conquering less advanced species. They had never encountered anyone more advanced than themselves. Now they had, and those advanced beings were offering to share knowledge rather than demanding surrender. It was beyond anything he had imagined, and they were only beginning to understand just how far beyond the Empire humanity had evolved.